The idea of sitting and composing 9 to 5 at a desk makes absolutely no sense to me.
Tends to be very spontaneous, absolutely no structure.
I think that I work linearly, but I probably don't. It's probably spiraling and making all sorts of weird shapes.
I do start thinking about the musical and the personal together.
I think I compose because I feel the need to connect with people on another level.
It's kind of got some kind of wear on it, and I think that's what a lot of my music has been occupied with.
Across, all music, but also across all art and all life, I think that sincerity is a really important value for me. And, when I listen to music and, hopefully when I write music, sincerity is very much at the front of my mind. I think it was a bit of a curvy path for me, musically and, and physically on the map. So I grew up in Tel Aviv. And I was actually mostly doing jazz guitar, and I went and I did my bachelor's in New York. And that experience was a bit turned on its head. I just kind of gradually understood that it's not the place for me. Yeah, and then I got into proper composition rather pretty late, and I was kind of aiming towards London actually, and towards Europe. I do feel that it kind of enables me by not being dogmatic and kind of one-sided to, kind of seek my own path. I think for me, looking at something directly can be a bit of a blurry experience, a bit like an eclipse. You can't really look at the eclipse without any special glasses, or, either your eyes will burn or you won't really see anything. So I think the musical filter helps me to examine things in a way that's a bit more sustainable and a way that can develop over time. I think that's also why a lot of my current endeavors comes also from thinking about maybe something not musical, that I want to use the music as a filter to be able to look at more clearly.
Why do I compose? This is a very big question, and it's hard to answer.
There's so many aspects to it and avenues, so you can spend whole days just reading or whole days just writing with absolutely no particular kind of reference or anything. You're just improvising or feeling it.
I spend like 90% of every day listening to something.
It takes you to another world, and I think that's what really excites me. You're in a world that is not quite this one.
So in my pieces, I like a sense of them coming in and out of focus in terms of resonance and harmony, and just the feeling of it in your body of when things are beating and are slightly out, and the energy of that versus when everything is really still and locked in, because it's quite an amazing feeling when you compare the two. Tuning systems is really big for me, and I think what I want to explore the most is putting these tuning systems in contexts other than contemporary classical music, bringing it into pop music, bringing it into film scores, bringing it into theatre, making it maybe more accessible than it may seem when it's kind of used in very complicated, abstract ways and only a concert hall with, very intellectual people there who understand it. I'd like people to be able to listen to it and appreciate it without necessarily feeling like they need to know the ins and outs. So that's just kind of a harmonic lattice explaining how each pitch is related to another pitch. Me kind of exploring different lines underneath and seeing what, between parts might sound nice, might sound resonant, what exploring those different intervals. And then I've got other lattices which kind of show triads in between, notes on comas, or how you can reach kind of notes which are almost the same but not, So starting with finding a C and then finding another version of a C through a different path. In my last score, I also wrote lots of kind of little notes like this, which would show, you know, one part goes, so if these are all fifths, one part goes down, and then one part goes all the way up here, and these two are the same letter, however one's slightly lower or one's slightly higher, and you'll get this kind of beating sensation. And then with rhythms, I kind of will, a lot of the time if I'm improvising, I'll kind of just improvise and then sit down and try and work out very messily what was going on, work out bare bone structures of what it sounded like, and then kind of the intricacy of what happened in that moment when I was improvising, so I know what it was if I wanted to play around with it later.
Yeah, my sofa.
Is this where I work in a kind of a metaphorical sense?
I'd say it's an ever-moving space.
I don't really go to a specific place physically.
People find this really weird, but I love working in really busy, noisy environments.
When I compose, I really need to shut myself out.
Yeah, so at the moment, my music, I think, deals a lot with the idea of nostalgia. All of my composing, I do it using audio playback on my notation software, which a lot of people say is a devilish thing to do, but it's the way I do it. If I find myself just having a sense of kind of delight or amusement or exhilaration at what comes out of the speakers or the headphones, I kind of know that I might be able to get that feeling out of someone else. And I think especially when I start wanting to kind of show the music to other people before it's ready, because I just want to say, just look at this, how different is this, then that gives me a sense that I'm onto something, I think. To me, a piece is good if people like it, so I do kind of appreciate when I get that feedback from other people quite a lot. I decided to be a composer at least because I kind of realized that I really enjoy showing people stuff that I've done in hopes that they will like it or find some amusement or joy in it. I think I kind of first realized this, it was in my A-level class. I found it so exciting listening to the playback on Sibelius of something that I'd written that I went around the class asking people to put the headphones on and listen to what I'd done, just to kind of see their reaction. It became a bit of an addiction of some kind, of wanting to share the stuff I've created with more and more people.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I am here collaborating with my fellow composers, singers and instrumentalists here in St Maltings throughout the year. Environment's been something I've been influenced by in my compositions for a very long time, ever since I went on lots of walks as a child, really, in the mountains, by rivers, all sorts of beautiful places. And the way it finds its way into my process is I try and think of my music as having a foreground and a background. So when I'm creating that background, I'm really thinking of how to create a sense of a world in which events happen. It's something that's definitely manifests itself in the kind of sound world of my piece, both in terms of like how I think about colour, whatever forces it is I'm writing for, but also thinking about how I actually create those worlds texturally. So I work a lot with long, drawn out figurations and like slow changing harmonies. I work a lot with modes, also pan modality, so the idea that, you know, you're changing between worlds of pitches but at a very gradual rate, so you can really feel one landscape filtering into another.
So I always start kind of drawing out, not notes or anything, just kind of drawing shapes and drawing textures that I like. It's just drawing out what you think you can hear and how you think you'd orchestrate that. So maybe I take a big piece of paper and I think, okay, so I want this kind of glassy texture at the beginning, and then the orchestra is going to move into a much more transparent and brittle texture here, and so the woodwinds are going to do this, and I can draw like little dots or something to represent different textures, and that's often a very good starting point. And if you can visually see what the structure is, that's a big help, I think, in the long run. So, you know, I'm still kind of exploring and trying to find new things, and I guess that's a huge part of myself. I love kind of finding out about new cultures, new pieces of art or music, and I guess researching and going to concerts are a huge part of who I am, and trying to get out there in the world and enjoying what there is to be offered by the arts. I mean, in terms of processes, when you've handed in all the parts, nothing can be changed, and it's about to be recorded, and that's like the most nerve-wracking moment for me, because I know there's nothing more I can offer or to change, and so everything that I've given now is the final version. And of course, you know, you can revisit pieces, but I often find there's not much point in revisiting old pieces, because by the time you've done that, you're a different person, you've got different experiences under your belt, and it's kind of probably more worth your time to start something new. I mean, obviously, I love to revisit old pieces, and I can find it really fun as well, and it's an exciting exercise to think about how you've changed as a composer. Like I revisited an old piano piece and extended it and had it performed, and that was super exciting, and I just found it very difficult actually, because it's kind of working with a different version of yourself and you don't know what you were thinking at the time. I was like, what did I mean by this musical gesture or whatever, and kind of figuring out what was my thought process at the time.
A lot of the actual material of my scores and all this kind of sound material that I generate is from quite a like impulsive or immediate place. It's just kind of what's at hand or what's inspiring me generally in my life at that time. And I think there's something to be said for just grabbing what's there, what's immediate to you, what feels like it's speaking to you in a moment, and working against some kind of intellectualized idea of what makes for good inspirational thorough process or whatever. A lot of my music uses random pop songs that I love at the time. That's often, if there's sound fragments that make their way into my pieces, it's often from that. And then scores, when I'm making kind of a visual score, it's often, again, like inspired by immediate things. Like I recently made a piece that there was no other name for it, I call it the bean piece, which used loads of beans. I am interested in abolition, I guess I would say, of society as we know it. I think the idea of a project of abolition is so rich in terms of what it gives us, thinking about practically about music and about what creative practice is, as well as more broadly about where our music sits in a broader context. Abolish things, I suppose, would be, I think I've never had to articulate it before, but I'm pretty happy with that, I think.